is political consultant and campaign director of Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. Here is what we've got coming up on the show. The Prime Minister apologises to the nation for allowing parties to take place in the gardens of Number 10, but is it enough to save his job? Meanwhile, in Parliament, victims of spiking have been giving evidence to MPs this morning following the grotesque spate of attacks over recent months. It's a grim story we must not let disappear into obscurity, so we will be finding out more. That's what we're talking about for the next hour, but what do you need to talk about? Email me, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or, of course, you can tweet me at gbnews. But first, it's time for the GB News headlines with the wonderful Rosie.
A very good afternoon to you. It's just gone 2 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright in the GB News newsroom. Let's get you up to date. The Prime Minister has apologised after admitting he was at a Downing Street drinks party during the first lockdown. Speaking during Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson says he believed it was a work event and therefore within the guidelines. The Prime Minister says the inquiry into the allegations must be completed so that the full facts can be established.
When I went into that garden just after 6 on the 20th of May 2020 to thank groups of staff before going back into my office 25 minutes later to continue working, I believed implicitly that this was a work event. But, Mr. Speaker, with hindsight, I should have sent everyone back inside. I should have found some other way to thank them.
Well, during what was a heated debate in the Commons this lunchtime, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was among those calling for the Prime Minister's resignation.
Well, there we have it. After months of deceit and deception, the pathetic spectacle of a man who's run out of road. His defence that he didn't realise he was at a party. It is so ridiculous that it's actually offensive to the British public.
A serving Metropolitan Police officer accused of a series of sex offences has appeared in court to face a further 9 charges. Our Home and Security editor Mark White was at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier.
PC David Carrick, who's attached to the Met Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, first appeared in court in October last year, charged with 1 count of rape. Last month, he appeared at St Albans Crown Court, facing a total of 20 counts against 4 women. Well, today a further 9 charges were laid before the court. In total, he now faces 29 allegations, including 13 counts of rape against 8 women. He appeared via video link from Belmarsh Prison today, was remanded back into custody and will appear in court in St Albans again on the 28th of this month.
French police have made an arrest in connection with the unsolved murders of a British family in the Alps almost 10 years ago. Saad Al-Hili, his wife Iqbal and their mother, Suhaila Al-Alaf, was shot dead on a road near Annecy in September of 2012. Their 2 daughters survived the attack. A French cyclist was also killed. In a statement, French authorities said a person had been arrested shortly after 8 a.m. this morning by police in Chambéry, saying that further details will be released later. The rollout of smart motorways in England, which uses the hard shoulder as a lane for traffic, has been suspended over safety concerns. The Department for Transport says it's taken the decision following several fatal crashes. New smart motorways will be put on hold until at least 5 years of data is collected. Campaigner Claire Mercer, whose husband was killed on a smart motorway, told GB News she isn't impressed with the new proposals.
They could have easily just flicked a switch and turned the first lane off while they investigate smart motorways for the 25th time in the last 2.5 years. Just pause it. All they've actually promised to do is pause the rollout of new smart motorways, but it's not even all just new smart motorways. It's only ones that aren't substantially completed. So we're still going to have smart motorways opening in the next few years.
Novak Djokovic has admitted breaking COVID isolation rules when he met a journalist after testing positive for coronavirus. He says he made an error of judgment, saying he wanted to fulfil the long-standing meeting with a reporter. It's as the Australian government is considering whether to deport him following a row over his visa and vaccination status. The world number one blamed a member of his team for what he called a human error as well in his travel documents. The Prince of Wales has commissioned a series of paintings of Britain's last remaining Holocaust survivors. 7 leading artists will paint the men and women who were once children in concentration camps and ghettos in the Second World War. The Prince says he hopes the portraits will be a lasting reminder of the horrors of the Nazi regime when it's lost to living memory. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more news as it happens. Now we need to talk about with Alex.
Better the devil you know, goes the old adage. But with the Prime Minister's apologies sounding, well, increasingly farcical, and the legendary gatekeepers of Tory leadership, the 1922 committee, meeting this afternoon, what would it take to topple him? Will Sue Gray's inquiry whitewash multiple COVID infringements and see him live to fight the May elections? Will it expose Boris as a busted flush? Or is this not time for change at the top? Do the Tories and the country still need the Bojo Mojo in spite of everything? One thing is for sure. WhatsApp groups are a chatter and the opposition are sharpening their blunt tools, while various news choppers gratuitously tracked the PM's car journey to Parliament as if he may symbolically career from power. The sense is that this time it's more than just a bump in the road. But before backbenchers add Boris to the bonfire of premature premierships, who on earth could take his place? Does the toothsome Sunak have the spine to tackle the cost of living crisis and reap Brexit's dividends? What about Liz Truss, the ex-Lib Dem, but now true blue poster girl and vocal protector of women's rights? Or is one of the opportunistic old guard ready to dust off their Correx boards and re-enter the fray? Or are the lot of them now so toxic, it's time to drag the nation back to the polls? Or, of course, in the ageist words of Brenda from Bristol, you're joking, not another one. Public opinion is all over the place, so we're going to try to figure out what could happen next. First, though, let's cross to Westminster and get the lowdown on the goings-on in Parliament with our political editor and guru, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, earlier today, the Prime Minister apologised for attending the Downing Street party, but is that going to cut the mustard?
Well, it depends, actually. Listening to some Conservative MPs, they do think that this has made a difference, that apology. For many others, they're certainly going to wait for Sue Gray's report before reaching judgment. And for others, even within the Conservative Party, they feel that there are still many questions to be answered and that apology did not go far enough. I think in the end, though, the bigger question for the Prime Minister is that repeatedly throughout December, ahead of Christmas, he told all of us, he told Parliament that there was no party. He told us that no COVID rules were broken. Today, he admitted not only was there a party, but that actually he was in attendance at one, even, I bet, inadvertently, as he would claim. Let's have a listen to the Prime Minister's admission and apology at PMQs a little earlier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to apologise. I know that millions of people across this country have made extraordinary sacrifices over the last 18 months. I know the anguish that they have been through, unable to mourn their relatives, unable to live their lives as they want, or to do the things they love. And I know the rage they feel with me and with the government I lead when they think that in Downing Street itself the rules are not being properly followed.
Now, the opposition parties, Alex, were making hay with this, unsurprisingly. Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, the DUP, all calling on the Prime Minister to resign this afternoon. He is not going to do that. He insists he's going to wait for Sue Gray's investigation, for her report to come in. That could be days, it could well still be weeks. And yet the questions this afternoon still continue to mount for the Prime Minister. Did he see Martin Reynolds' email in which He made it clear, of course, that it was a social event about bring your own booze, essentially. When did the Prime Minister realise that this was a party? Was it when he was there, or subsequently, was it in the last couple of days, only when this story broke? Also, why was his wife there if it was a work event? Why were people drinking if it was only a work event? These questions will continue to be put to the Prime Minister's spokesperson and indeed to the Prime Minister himself. I think he is hoping that in the end he will ride the next couple of weeks out, that Suze Gray's investigation will exonerate him and he can draw a line under this matter. But believe me, at the moment, standing here right now, that seems far from certain.
Darren, thank you ever so much for your erudite analysis, as always. Well, we're joined now by Matthew Goodwin, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent. And also joining us is Conservative political commentator Dominique Samuels. Matthew, let's start with you. I mean, it strikes me that it's very clear Boris Johnson went to this event on the 20th of May. That very same day, Oliver Dowden addressed the nation in one of the coronavirus press conferences, reaffirming that the law, it wasn't guidance, it was the law, that you could only meet one other person outside at a distance of 2 metres. So effectively, the Prime Minister has broken the law. Can he survive that?
Well, I agree with your previous correspondent, Darren. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Prime Minister to survive, but not impossible. Apologising today, I think, will probably take the immediate heat out of the crisis facing Boris Johnson and will give him a little bit of breathing room until the findings of the inquiry come in. But we all know, Alex, it's not really only about the party. The frustration on the backbenches is as much to do with his handling of COVID, with the sort of direction of his Conservative Party. And so the immediate crisis, the immediate departure even of Boris Johnson might not happen today or tomorrow, but I think it's firmly on the landscape. The question is when, not if.
Yeah, I mean, let's throw to you now, Dominique. It is potentially a when, not if. I think we have to be putting our minds towards whether we agree with what Boris did or not, whether we're angry about it or not. If the Prime Minister is found to have broken the law, he's in a very difficult position. So surely we now need to start looking at, well, what happens next? Who would you like to see at the helm of the Conservative Party if Boris goes?
Well, none of them. And if it were to be someone, it would probably be someone like Mark Harper, like Steve Baker, any one of the Conservative MPs that have spoken up against the direction of the government in terms of COVID restrictions. But the likelihood of that happening is virtually nil. I think, especially for the country as well, if anyone in Cabinet were to take the helm as Conservative leader, if Boris were to resign, the opinion of the country would be that the whole lot of them are completely toxic. So regardless of who it would be, the inevitability would be a general election. And, that would be a gift to Labour, essentially. That would be a victory for them, because what they essentially want is for the Prime Minister to resign and for there to be another general election where they can stand on a moral pedestal, essentially. My fear with that is, judging by, how Welsh Labour has behaved, for example, with COVID restrictions, a lot of the time putting them in place prematurely, would be in lockdown within a click of a finger. And where Boris is concerned, I think it's clear he is very sceptical of continuing on with COVID restrictions. He's set to remove all of them on the 26th of January. So, yeah, I think it's better the devil you know for now.
And going back to you, Matthew, I mean, Dominique makes an interesting point there, doesn't she? And she's sort of saying that she'd want someone like Mark Harper, Steve Baker. I mean, whether or not they could break through, I don't know. Would this go to a general election? You're a bit of a master when it comes to things like psephology and reading the political tea leaves. What do you think something like a change of leadership or a general election, what effect would that have on the Conservative Party? And what sort of way might the country turn?
Well, big questions, Alex. I think the short answer to that is if we end up with somebody like Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss taking over as leader of the Conservative Party at some point this year.
Oh, look at that. The wisdom has been temporarily frozen. Let's see if that connection will come back. I was waiting with bated breath to know what he was going to say. So, look, oh, no, we've lost them both. Blimey. Oh, we've still got Dominique. Thank goodness it's not all falling apart. So, Dominique, two names put forward there by Matthew who look like they would be the front runners, potentially, to become leadership contenders. If there was going to be, say, a sort of quiet behind-the-scenes transfer of power, do you think either of them have what it takes to lead the country, Sunak and Truss?
I think potentially Rishi Sunak, but one thing I haven't liked is that he genuinely does want to be leader. He does want to replace Boris Johnson. He is very well liked amongst the Conservative membership, and I think very well regarded, amongst the public in general. So I think he could take the helm, but I think in the minds of many, he has been a part of a cabinet that has put in place a lot of restrictions on people's freedom. And to be honest with you, I don't believe for one second that he and Liz weren't aware of some rule breaking within Downing Street. I think that's a pretty ridiculous thing to suggest. So yes, Rishi Sunak would be, a more favourable choice. But I think in general, an inevitability would be a general election. And I mean, it's up to Matt whether or not he agrees with me when he comes back.
And if there was a general election, would you still stick with the Conservative Party, or would you potentially look to go shopping elsewhere with your vote?
I think I'd definitely look elsewhere. I've said continually throughout, the past couple of years that I'm never going to vote for the Conservative Party again. I essentially voted for Boris reluctantly the first time to, get Brexit done. But the direction of the Conservative Party, for me and for many people, is completely unrecognisable. And I think many of the things that they've done have been unconservative and, quite frankly, unforgivable. But one thing, I am happy about is the fact that Boris and his cabinet has demonstrated that they can't even follow the rules they set themselves. So why should we? That's something I'm quite feeling very positive about.
Yeah, well, there you are, Dominique. Well said. Dominique Samuel's there. We love having her on. Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by my special guest today, Rebecca Ryan, who's a political consultant and campaign director of Defund the BBC. What are your thoughts on this one? I mean, are you sort of there champing at the bit for Boris to go, or do you think, well, look, even if he did break the law, we don't need a shuffle at the top right now. He does have this sort of mojo, this optimism that, potentially has some impetus. He seems to have a very core following.
Yeah, I think what it really reflects is the culture in Westminster really is, chock full of trust fund kids, basically. The country's being run by kids that, have no connection with the real world outside of the M25. And I think if you get rid of Boris and you put somebody else in, you're not really going to resolve that problem. There's not many people who the country feels confident enough are really going to bring about those changes that they wanted to see and why they voted for Boris. And I think that's what people are really disappointed about, is that, they really believed that Boris was going to bring about a huge amount of change, like the getting rid of the licence fee and what have you. And I think there is still an element of goodwill left for Boris. He's a lovable character. Anybody who's met him not realise that it was a party or a work event. He's all prime ministers are extremely busy. They're led from one area to another by their advisors. But I think it's the culture within Number 10 that's the real problem here. This attitude of, we can dictate what everybody else has to do and, it doesn't apply to us. And I think that's what people are really sick of.
Yeah, no, I could mean that you're exempt from breaking the law, does it? I want to know what you think, of course. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews so I know what you, the nation, really thinks. You're with GB News on TV and radio, and after the break, my guest Rebecca Ryan tells us what key policies she'd have in her Womanifesto if she were in charge. First, it's time for a check on the weather forecast.
Hello. A sparkling day of winter sunshine for most parts of the UK. It is a little cloudier over northwest England, Northern Ireland and western Scotland, and tonight we will again see frost and fog patches forming. Big chunky area of high pressure has moved in, keeping the weather fronts well to the north. Notice though across Scotland the isobars are a little closer together, so it's quite windy here, and that wind is bringing a lot of cloud to western Scotland, patchy rain over the Highlands and the Northern Isles. A bit of cloud too for northwest England, Northern Ireland, but much of eastern England, The Midlands, Wales and the south, dry, fine and sunny. And after a cold and frosty start, temperatures ticking up to around average 7, 8, 9 Celsius. It is milder further north. We could reach 12 Celsius, say, in Aberdeenshire. But we'll keep the patchy rain going across the far northwest through the evening and overnight. Otherwise, it's dry. Clear skies in the south will allow a frost fairly quickly this evening to form. And then later in the night, some dense patches of fog likely over the Midlands, South Wales and particularly parts of southern England. Patchy in nature, but nevertheless could be problematic first thing in the morning. Not so frosty further north, where we'll keep the breeze and we'll keep quite a lot of cloud. That cloud still providing some rain at times over the Highlands, but otherwise a dry day again to come tomorrow. Watch out for that fog in the morning across the south, patchy in nature, but could be quite dense. Should be out of the way by late morning, however, and then it's another generally fine and sunny day across the south. A bit more cloud further north, and again temperatures getting up to around average, maybe double digits in the southwest. Certainly again though mild in the far north, where we'll have again breezy and cloudy conditions with some patchy rain that'll continue into Thursday evening. And again we do the same with that frost forming quite quickly on Thursday evening, and if anything some thicker fog patches likely for Friday morning. So the next few days largely dry, some sunshine, some fog patches and cold mornings, especially so across the south.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Well, welcome back. And there's been some breaking news just now. The Duke of York will face a civil sex case trial after a US judge dismissed a motion by Andrew's legal team to have the lawsuit thrown out. I mean, it's pretty big information, isn't it? Where do you stand on this with Andrew? I mean, I just find it, I want it to go away, not because I like him and not because I would in any way condone what on earth it was that Epstein was up to, but the Queen and the reputation of the royal family.
Yeah, I mean, it's really upsetting for the Queen to be having to deal with this at this sort of late stage in her life. You don't think that she should have to deal with this kind of thing. I mean, my view on Prince Andrew, I'm not completely across the case, but my understanding is that it happened in the UK where the age of consent is 16, and I believe that the girl was 17. So I'm not 100% certain, but if he has to face justice, then that should be the case. you know, he's made an absolute fudge of it, though, hasn't he, with that interview where he, you know, claimed
the sweat gate. Yeah, I mean, I worry that, you know, now this is going to be a case in America. The American press will be over it. It's going to be a tawdry affair. I mean, you kind of need Meghan and Harry to start doing something dreadful again, don't you, to take the heat off? But no, it's horrible stuff. We, of course, will keep you up to date with all of the information pertaining to that trial as it proceeds. Well, let's move on now, because it's time for the section of the show where we doff our fascinators to the imagined matriarchy and we go about building our very own Womanifesto. Now, all of my guests get to nominate 3 policies they think would make the world a better place. And as High Empress of the show, I'll, of course, decide if they make the cut. Well, going back to Rebecca Ryan, political consultant and campaign director of Defund the BBC. She's in charge today. So what would you change? I'm going to have a punt that some of it might be to do with the licence fee, but, you know, you might surprise me.
Yeah, absolutely. So top of the list has got to be getting rid of the TV licence fee. You know, the British public just have had enough of it. Poll after poll shows that, you know, over 2/3 of the country wants to see an end to this, you know, archaic tax on people who are watching sort of, you know, broadcast TV. Time has moved on, technology has moved on, and, you know, it's actually quite discriminatory against women. We find that 74% of prosecutions are of women rather than of men, and so I think the BBC sort of placing itself in this sort of moral high ground as sort of the arbiter of Britain's morality is really, really out of touch, and it's not how the British public sees them at all. So, yeah, it's got to go.
Do you not think it's going to sort of phase itself out as more and more people just move to on-demand platforms and get rid of televisions and therefore say, well, I'm not paying the licence fee, I'm not using these services? I mean, is it not just going to put itself out of existence eventually?
I think it will. I think absolutely, if politicians don't step in and get rid of it, then it will be phased out. Young people are not buying, you know, licences, so they don't watch any live TV. You've seen that pensioners, since they've been forced to have to pay for it, are not paying for the licence because they've spent, you know, years being patronised and treated very badly about their sort of Brexit vote and what have you by the BBC. So, you know, there's a squeeze on both sides, and at the same time, also thanks to COVID, people have discovered, you know, in that middle area, have discovered, you know, all the joys of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus and all these other areas where they can get amazing content from, and they're choosing to sign up for that, and they're thinking, well, hang on a minute, why am I paying double for the BBC when I'm not actually watching anything from it? And then they sort of do a bit of research and realise you don't need to have a TV licence if you're only watching on demand, except iPlayer.
So what would be your alternative? Would you sort of make the BBC a commercial enterprise that has advertisements or a subscriber model? What route would you want it to go down?
I mean, it's not really for us to say how they should fund themselves. It should be down to, you know, how their supporters think. But I mean, my view would be that people would be happier with the subscription model than with adverts. But it would depend what their viewer base is. But yeah, I think it should be 100% commercial. I think that's the way that things are going, and that's the public mood.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I agree with you. It would create a level playing field. I don't see any reason why the BBC should anymore get special privileges over our televisions. But yeah, okay, we'll nudge that one in. We'll let that one live. Okay, number 2.
So number 2 is sort of on a different topic. I'm a mother. I have a teenage daughter, and I think that what we're seeing now in the news, your viewers will probably have seen a lot, is that there's a real encroachment on women's sex-based rights, and there's this debate going on now, which is trying to, the rest of the media, not yourselves or Talk Radio, are sort of trying to portray it as an attack on trans rights. But actually, it's a conversation about women's sex-based rights, you know, in prisons, in sport, in hospital wards and that kind of thing. So, yeah, my policy would be to ensure that women's sex-based rights are absolutely protected.
Yeah, no, we're big supporters and believers of that here on We Need to Talk About. And, you know, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I always think that when you move into the territory of gender self-ID, surely that itself is an imposition on these imagined trans rights, because anyone can turn around and use the guise of saying I am trans without having to prove or demonstrate anything to potentially become, you know, opportunistic perverts in changing rooms. I can't see that good comes out of this for anybody. So
absolutely, and I think the thing is, and the trans radical argument against that would be, well, you're portraying all trans people, you're tarring everybody with one brush. But I think the thing is, you know, nobody's saying that trans people should have their rights removed if they've been through that sort of medical gateway, and they, you know, but there are. Everybody knows that there are sort of dangerous men out there. I mean, I think that is sort of indisputable when you look at sort of the statistics around sort of sexual violence, and those men, you know, will certainly take advantage of the loopholes that are currently.
Oh yeah, it won't be normal, law-abiding, decent men who decide one day they're going to say they're a woman and go into the toilet. This is going to be the Levi Belfields and the Fred Wests of this world. Okay, no, absolutely, 100% behind that one. Brilliant. And the third
one sort of follows on from the second one, really, which is that just in order to be able to nail those women's sex-based rights into place, at the moment we've really fudged the language between using sort of sex and gender in our law, which is really quite dangerous. So, for example, now on your passport it says your gender and then male or female. Well, that isn't actually a gender, you know, that is your sex. But I think being British, we've been a bit squeamish about using the word sex. Well, for whatever reason, we've allowed gender to kind of replace the word sex, and that's, you know, causing lots of problems for protecting women's sex-based rights. So yeah, I would say we need to clarify on all legal documents and really in the law that sex-based rights are protected. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This madness around language at the moment, that, you know, all language is up for interpretation, and what you thought was true is false, and it's dreadful. I actually think it's just going to lead to sort of mass hysteria and mental illness. So 100% on that one as well. Rebecca, great policies. Well, there we go. What do you think of those in the Woman Manifesto? You're with GB News on TV and, of course, DAB radio. Welcome to all of those listening to me in audio and missing out on the fact that I have a very cheery bright yellow dress on today. Now, after the break, my guest is going to have her say on what she needs to talk about. Rebecca Ryan is going to be bringing us that. But first of all, let's check in on the news headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 2:31. You're with me, Rosie Wright. Now, in the last few moments in New York, the US judge presiding over the civil sex lawsuit against Prince Andrew has decided the case will go to trial. The Duke of York's legal team put forward a motion to have the case thrown out. They cited a 2009 deal that his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, signed with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But today, that's been dismissed. Ms. Giuffre claims the prince sexually assaulted her when she was 17. Prince Andrew denies any wrongdoing. We're bringing you updates as we get them here on GB News. There'll be more news as it happens. Right now, on the money.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Well, as I said earlier on the show, there's been breaking news just earlier that Prince Andrew will be facing a civil sex case in America. The problems for Prince Andrew seemingly not going anywhere. So, here's an explainer about the case by our reporter, Ellie Costello.
Virginia Giuffre claims she was trafficked and abused by the late paedophile Jeffrey Epstein when she was a teenager. Criminal charges were brought against Epstein, who killed himself in prison in 2019 while awaiting trial for sex trafficking. Virginia Giuffre also claims to have been forced to have had sex with Prince Andrew when she was 17, classified as a minor under US law in the state of Florida. Virginia Giuffre is seeking unspecified damages, but there is speculation the claim could be in millions of dollars. Prince Andrew denies the allegations against him. His lawyers have been fighting to have the civil case thrown out, arguing that Virginia Giuffre relinquished any rights when she signed an agreement with Epstein in 2009. The settlement, made public earlier this month, revealed that Virginia Giuffre accepted $500,000, or around £370 million from Epstein, protecting him or any other potential defendant from prosecution. Prince Andrew's lawyers say this should include the Duke of York. They also claim that the court doesn't have jurisdiction because Giuffre has lived in Australia for most of the past 20 years. Ms. Giuffre's lawyers claimed that the settlement was irrelevant to her proceedings against the Duke of York because it was filed in Florida. She alleges that Prince Andrew sexually assaulted her in New York, London, and the US Virgin Islands. Virginia Giuffre claims she was first introduced to the royal by Jeffrey Epstein and his then-girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of media tycoon Robert Maxwell in London. She says they danced together in Tramp nightclub and that after that she was forced to have sex with him in Maxwell's Belgravia home. During Prince Andrew's 2019 interview with BBC Newsnight, he denied ever meeting Miss Giuffre, claiming that on the night she said they had met, he had instead taken his daughter Beatrice to Pizza Express in Woking. Prince Andrew was once friends with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. He says he first met Epstein in 1999. Photos show the three of them on a trip to Windsor Castle and on the Queen's Sandringham estate in Norfolk for a shooting weekend. Last month, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty on 5 of the 6 charges that she faced, including the most serious, of sex trafficking a minor. She now faces the rest of her life behind bars. Prince Andrew is not facing any criminal proceedings in the UK or the US. Ellie.
Well, big breaking news there, and hardly welcome news for the royal family and the Queen, I would imagine. And we are hoping to speak to Robert Jobson, who is, of course, a royal biographer and royal correspondent, to discuss the impact that this case may have on the royal family. But while we're waiting to do that, we will, of course, allow the esteemed guests that we have on every day to unburden themselves and tell me what they need to talk about. And of course, there's been a lot of noise about the BBC licence fee in recent times and fiery debate over whether it's high time to scrap it. But are prosecutions for not having a TV licence disproportionately targeting women? Yeah, it sounds crazy, but the stats seem to show that that is the case. In fact, licence fee evasion accounts for almost a third of all female prosecutions, and also around 75% of prosecutions for licence fee evasion are towards women. Interesting stuff. So, Rebecca, what's going on there? Why is that the case?
Yeah, well, this was raised actually in a government research paper in 2019 where they looked at it and so they are fully aware of this real social justice issue here, which is how the BBC is going about prosecuting licence fee evasion. And the fact that 75% of the prosecutions are against women is really, really problematic, considering less than 20% of all crimes are committed by women. So, you know, it's not as if it's 50-50 on crime and 75 over. You know, this is a hugely disproportionate amount of prosecution. And what this comes down to is the fact that the licence fee is attached to a property, it's not attached to a person. So when people come round to your house to see if you've got a licence fee, they will simply get the first person who answers the door. And that is always, you know, far more likely to be a woman because of, you know, being at home looking after the kids, far more likely to do part-time work. And also the fact that having a big burly man on your doorstep with a clipboard saying, I need to come into your house to have a look at your TV, a woman's far more likely to say, oh, OK, we're more compliant when it comes to sort of following the law than perhaps men are as well. So, you know, we're seeing this massive discrimination actually against women. And as you said there, a third of all prosecutions against women are for TV licence evasion. And that's just outrageous, isn't it? So we're criminalising the most vulnerable women in society with, you know, for not paying a TV licence fee based on the fact that the BBC's prosecution methods are, you know, really discriminatory.
Yes, interesting. I did not know that statistic before today. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now, we can cross to Robert Jobson, who is royal biographer and journalist, to discuss more about this breaking news that Prince Andrew will indeed face a civil sex case in America. Dreadful news for the royal family, Robert.
Well, it is, but the reality is I think that Prince Andrew, if he's ever going to clear his name, has got to go to court in some form. This is the only case that is against him. Virginia Giuffre has brought a civil case, not a criminal case against him. And if he'd got off on a technicality or he wasn't able to clear his name, I think that most people, in terms of the court of public opinion, wouldn't really have thought it one way or the other. They would still think that he damned himself in that interview. So I suppose you've really got to look at it as, if you're Andrew and his lawyers, that they can at least clear his name and defeat Miss Giuffre in this case. And that's the only thing they can hope for. The only thing that is odd about the decision by the judge, of course, is that this was a case that Miss Giuffre had signed an agreement with Epstein where she received a $500,000 payout. We understand that her total payout now is something like $7 million from other funds. But she'd agreed that she would not prosecute other people in connection with the Epstein case or anyone associated with it. That now seems to have been overruled. So I don't know what it means for future deals between prospective people of this type. It seems that that's been thrown out the water. But the only thing that can happen here is that Prince Andrew now actually prepares his case and goes and his lawyers defend him vigorously.
And in terms of with a civil sex case taking place in America, is this going to unleash a load of tawdry details about what might have gone on into the public domain, which will then be sort of greedily reported on by the American media? Or do you think it's going to be more of a closed affair?
Well, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the tawdry details have emerged already in terms of what this Virginia Giuffre has said. She's made all sorts of claims about the behaviour of Prince Andrew, of which he has vigorously denied. So at least he'd be allowed to now at least defend himself. But until that happens, we don't know what's going to come out in terms of further details. But one must remember she's made a number of television programmes and has claimed that he'd had sex with her when she was under the age of 18, which was illegal in America, and that she was trafficked has been accepted by the fact that this agreement was done with Epstein. So we've had a lot of the tawdry details already. But yeah, it's quite possible more could come out.
How do you think the royal family are likely to react to this? Are they going to strip him of positions, do you think? I mean, they must be, right, they must have prepared for this to emerge. But it's a bit of a PR disaster for them, isn't it? And what on earth can they do to mitigate the fallout?
Well, it's more than a PR disaster. I think it's something that's clearly very, very damaging to the institution, but more damaging to the individual. The Duke of York, if he's found guilty of this, he may argue that jurisdiction allows him not to pay the fine. But this dark cloud will be.
And Robert, finally, how is this? Have you seen any indication of how this is playing out in America?
Well, it'd be huge. I mean, the fact is, this is the Queen's second son who's now going to face a civil action for in a sex case against a minor. And when he was born, he was second in line to the throne. I mean, this is a huge case, and I think it can only cause embarrassment not only for his reputation but for that of the monarchy and Britain, really.
And I mean, the Queen this is supposed to be her amazing Jubilee year. We're all supposed to be celebrating. We had the awful loss of Prince Philip last year. It's been a pretty, and Megxit, of course, it's been a pretty torrid time for her. Do you think she's, resilient enough to be able to go through yet another load of drama?
Well, the fact is the Queen has been pretty resilient all through her life. She's somebody that just is a pragmatist and deals with what's in front of her. As far as she's concerned, her son is innocent. He has obviously told her he's not guilty of these crimes. Not guilty of this entire case, and that so far the royal family have been supportive of him. She'll have to just deal with it as it comes along. There's no point in doing anything else. What else can she do? The case is now going ahead. The lawyers will now have to do their jobs.
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much for joining us last minute to address that breaking news that we've just had. Robert Jobson there, who is a royal biographer and a royal correspondent. Well, let's now go back to our discussion on the BBC licence fee. I know we've been jumping all over the place, haven't we? But when we have breaking news, it's important that you GB News viewers and listeners do get that fresh off the press. We were talking, of course, about prosecutions for not having a licence fee disproportionately targeting women, and the stats do seem to show that that is the case. In fact, licence fee evasion accounts for almost a third of all female prosecutions, while almost 3/4 of licence evasion charges are brought against women. It is a remarkable stat, and we were talking about the fact that these, tend to be vulnerable women who might not be able to afford to have a TV licence, but might actually depend on having a television in their home if they're single mothers or so on and so forth. Do you think, is this something that the BBC have taken on board? Is this an issue that has been raised to the BBC?
I think it's definitely been raised to the BBC. As I said, this data has been available in government reports since at least 2019, so they are aware of this. There is a significant social justice issue there around how they collect the licence fee. And as you said, these are really vulnerable women who are having to choose between, feeding their kids or, paying the BBC. And, that doesn't really support their branding of themselves as this sort of moral arbiter. So I think, we really need to shed a light on it. And I think also what needs to be made clear is that the BBC is really deceptive in how it gets across who needs to have a licence fee. So a lot of people think that you need a licence just to own a TV, and that used to be the case, but that's not the case anymore. You can have a TV in your house and you can watch all on demand except for BBC iPlayer. So I think a lot of people are very confused about what the rules are, and in the messaging and the letters and on their website that the BBC sort of send out to people, it's sort of they use this term live TV, and a lot of people think, well, if I'm not watching live sport or live news, then it's pre-recorded, so that's not live TV, but actually they mean live broadcast. And so it becomes quite complicated as to what that actually is, and therefore people either just think, well, I'll take a risk, because I really can't afford to pay for my licence fee. I really need to feed my kids or get a new school uniform or whatever. Or, they just switch off altogether. And then it's, they're taking a gamble. And I think that the BBC and the government should force the BBC to be real transparency around the fact that you don't need to have a licence fee if you're just watching on demand. Let's be clear with people what they need a licence fee for, so that women aren't being massively disproportionately prosecuted for something that's, a very small issue, really. In the minds of the greater public, they don't see this as sort of something that women should be being sent to prison for, or being, really penalised with thousands of pounds worth of fines when they're in real financial straits.
But arguably, look, the BBC is the public service broadcast, and with that come a whole slate of offerings that the BBC makes that perhaps other channels do not. Learning resources, CBBC, so on and so forth, coverage of the big national events, things that, you know, you might want your child to sit down and watch. And arguably, if you then take away the licence fee or exempt people from not following the rules, you're actually going to potentially damage the public service offering from the BBC.
I think you find that out there in the public that more and more people don't actually see it as much of a public service offering anymore. It's a public service, you know, lecture. You know, in every opportunity they take to sort of preach their own set of beliefs to people. And so that's why people are turning off. You know, it's all very well having CBBS, you know, that's great for the kids. If they weren't being, you know, people see it as their children are being brainwashed in a way. You know, I mean, that's a bit of an extreme view, but there are these sort of messages that they're trying to get through. You know, the BBC is seen as now a sort of campaigning organisation where it's pushing these, you know, values onto the country that the country doesn't agree with. So, whilst it potentially could offer value for money if it did take a very neutral position, people at the moment just don't see the value in that.
But, you know, in terms of some of the things, I've always been a big fan of BBC World, having lived abroad, and I think it's an incredible tool of soft diplomacy internationally, where we as a country provide a service to some of the most marginalised and remote communities, to the old Commonwealth partners of the United Kingdom. And in many respects, it keeps Britain in the minds of other countries as an important and influential power in the world. Is there not a risk that by getting rid of the licence fee, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Well, actually, the World Service is funded through general taxation anyway, not through the licence fee. So that's a separate thing we're actually taxed for that people don't realise that is, you know, we don't have a say over that at all. And we could argue that that is a great part of soft power, and there's probably an element of truth in that. But also we get complaints from people across the world where they say that the BBC, again, has taken a sort of campaign position, you know, in Kashmir, for example, or, you know, these different areas where they're pushing one slant too far. And, you know, people in other countries don't like that either.
Yeah, well, no, I couldn't agree more, actually. Well, we, of course, approached the BBC for a statement. We'd be remiss if we did not. And a TV licensing spokesperson said an independent review of TV licence fee enforcement found no evidence to suggest that women were intentionally targeted, and it confirmed that enforcement was fair and proportionate. Prosecution is always a last resort, the statement goes on to say. We continue to work with groups throughout the UK which support women who fall into financial difficulty, and we have payment plans available to help people make regular payments. Well, we've been all over the place today, like I said earlier, and let's go back to the top story that we covered today. Of course, following the Prime Minister's apology in PMQs, you've been sending us your views about that and those Downing Street events, as he calls them. Greg says, Boris, do not resign. Fix what you broke, or you get away with it just like Hancock and the rest. This was always his escape route. Don't let him off the hook. Marcus says the Conservatives would be mad to keep him. He's not the vote winner that they think he is. William says, what's the alternative? Sir Keir? No, no, no. Well, thanks for all your views. I have a feeling this story is not about to go anywhere anytime soon. Now, over the last week, if you've been watching this programme, you will know that we have been asking what it is that women want. Yes, it's an enigma that still befuddles men to this day, befuddles women as well, befuddles me. So here on We Need to Talk About, we're going to try and find out. So our wolf whistles offensive is holding the door open complete cringe. And do we really want to pay our half of the bill, or is it nice to be old-fashioned when it suits us? It's time for the daily trigger warning. Well, let's go back to Rebecca. What is your trigger? What is it that you'd throw in the dustbin of history and do away with once and for all?
I'd get rid of trigger warnings, to be honest.
Really?
Yes, I'd get rid of trigger warnings. I think, you know, I mean, as a mother, coming back to that, you know, I'm particularly concerned about the mental well-being of teenagers because my daughter told me that her class now, I think 2/3 of them have these little get out of class cards where they can go and see the school counsellor because they, so impacted. Yeah, so impacted. I think
if something in a lesson upsets them, they can just go on getting out of class.
Absolutely, and I think this has exploded. The numbers of us have exploded because of COVID, and you can see that the impact that has had actually on young people being locked away from their social group, and now they're sort of trying to cope with it in all sorts of strange ways. But I think we really need to give young people a better way of coping with things rather than just, this kind of trigger warnings and black and white position on things and cancel this and what have you. Young people need to be learning to deal with things. The world is going to deliver things that aren't particularly nice, but let's talk about it. Let's not just, prevent everybody from having a discussion and facing sometimes bad realities.
It strikes me that it will be the naughty kids in class, won't it, kicking up a fuss and saying, "Oh, miss, this offends me. I must leave the lesson now." But how on earth did we get to this place where an individual's agency, and especially minors, trumps the sense of commonality and community and, just basically dealing with what it is that life is throwing at you? Surely if we get to a stage where students can just leave a lesson at will because it offends them, they're not going to grow up to be law-abiding citizens.
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is, I think that they're so sort of easily offended by things, coming back to as well with sort of religious sensitivities and that kind of thing, where if you say something that's like it might be offensive to Christian people or to, Jewish people, whatever, and it's not meant in that way, but young people are really, they're taking a very sort of like hard line on any sort of offence whatsoever could not even be discussed. And I think we've got a real sort of danger coming down the line of these young people who have not been able to debate, issues where they're able to disagree. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was at school, we used to debate the rights and wrongs of fox hunting and of abortion and what have you. And we would have those debates openly in school. We were encouraged to have those. But nowadays they don't do that. It's just like, well, this is bad and this is good, and any other in between ground is just completely shut down. And I think we have to put an end to that and get our children looking and discussing difficult issues again.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not teaching resilience to the next generation, they're going to be leading us soon. We're going to be in our twilight years, and these ridiculous characters are going to be in charge of things, and then we'll wish Boris Johnson had never broken the law and stays forever. Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been a bit of a all-over-the-place show with breaking news, but it's been delightful having you sitting next to me today. So thank you so much for your company, your trigger warning, and your fantastic policies. Well, something that might be offensive to those of you out there who desperately love tuning into this programme every single day, I'm going to have to go now because that's the end of the show. That's it for We Need to Talk About right now, but do join me again, same time, same place tomorrow, 2 o'clock, of course. Coming up next, it's The Briefing with Darren McCaffrey. I wonder what he's going to be discussing. First of all, though, it's time for the weather forecast. Bye from me.
Hello. A sparkling day of winter sunshine for most parts of the UK. It is a little cloudier over northwest England, Northern Ireland and western Scotland. And tonight we will again see frost and fog patches forming. Big chunky area of high pressure has moved in, keeping the weather fronts well to the north. Notice though across Scotland the isobars are a little closer together, so it's quite windy here, and that wind is bringing a lot of cloud to western Scotland, patchy rain over the Highlands and the Northern Isles. Bit of cloud too for northwest England, Northern Ireland, but much of eastern England, the Midlands, Wales and the south, dry, fine and sunny. And after a cold and frosty start, temperatures ticking up to around average 7, 8, 9 Celsius. It is milder further north. We could reach 12 Celsius, say, in Aberdeenshire. But we'll keep the patchy rain going across the far northwest through the evening and overnight. Otherwise, it's dry. Clear skies in the south will allow a frost fairly quickly this evening to form. And then later in the night, some dense patches of fog likely over the Midlands, South Wales and particularly parts of southern England. Patchy in nature, but nevertheless could be problematic first thing in the morning. Not so frosty further north, where we'll keep the breeze and we'll keep quite a lot of cloud. That cloud still providing some rain at times over the Highlands, but otherwise a dry day again to come tomorrow. Watch out for that fog in the morning across the south, patchy in nature, but could be quite dense. Should be out of the way by late morning, however, and then it's another generally fine and sunny day across the south a bit more cloud further north. And again, temperatures getting up to around average, maybe double digits in the southwest. Certainly again, though, mild in the far north, where we'll have, again, breezy and cloudy conditions with some patchy rain. That'll continue into Thursday evening. And again, we do the same with that frost forming quite quickly on Thursday evening. And if anything, some thicker fog patches likely for Friday morning. So the next few days, largely dry, some sunshine, some fog patches and cold mornings, especially so across the south. Bye for now.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.